Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
That new thing? Yeah, we've got it. The Drop by GNC, bringing you all the newness that matters, handpicked by the pros who actually know what's up and what's proven to work. We keep you on top of the trends and dialed into what's next. Whether you're crushing it at the gym, leveling up your game, or thriving every day, The Drop by GNC is where the latest solutions in health and wellness land first. Non-stop innovation and fresh finds daily. Explore what's new and what's next on The Drop by GNC.
Hello and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm the therapist, Tess Brigham.
And I'm Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And today we are talking about the Netflix docuseries called Unlocked, a Jail Experiment. This was an 8-episode series that came out earlier this year on Netflix. And I'm really happy that we're covering it because I have a lot of feelings about the U.S. prison system. And always when, people ask, if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do with the money? Besides, obviously, maybe going on some trips and doing all these other things, what's the big thing that you would do if you had a lot of money? And this is what I would do, is I would prison reform.
You and Kim K.
Yeah, me and Kim K.
We'd be working together.
Yes. So prison reform and homeless teenagers and all that kind of stuff. Those are the things that I'm all about. So, So, and I thought this was utterly a fascinating thing to watch.
I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, when I first saw it. And I was like, well, it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So basically this series follows 46 inmates at the Pulaski County Regional Detention Facility. And this is in Arkansas. I forgot
Little Rock.
Little Rock. It's out in Little Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is it's a huge detention facility. And they are in what they call H unit. So this is just a very small portion of the prison. And it's actually not a prison. Let's make a distinction here. So at least in California, and it seems like from what I saw on this show, it's pretty much the same in Arkansas. If you are awaiting trial or if you are serving a sentence that is less than a year, you are detained in a county detention facility like this one, or like the county jail. So it normally is referred to. Once your case, if you go to trial and you're convicted or you plead guilty and you're sentenced, if you're sentenced to prison, meaning it's for a year or more, then they transfer you to the prison wherever you're going to do your time. So the men in this unit are, it seemed to me, mostly awaiting trial. It didn't seem like any of them were actually sentenced yet. Seemed like they were all awaiting trial.
Yes.
Yeah, because there was some, and it was some people were in there awaiting trial for capital murder. Some were in there awaiting trial for drug charges or domestic violence or assault or, things like that. I mean, pretty much, these are violent crimes. So the sheriff in this county, Eric Higgins, he decided that he wanted to do this 6-week experiment. And the goal or the question, that he went into it with was, how do we make the facility safer? And what can we do to still hold inmates accountable, but empower them at the same time? So I don't know if the production company approached him or he approached the production company. And actually, after the airing of this, there was a little bit of kind of outrage, like, what? Like, how did this happen? And why did this happen? People didn't like it because it seemed like this, it was making light of something very serious. Like, this is a reality show type thing. And there was an investigation into it. And it turns out that the sheriff's department got paid not that much. It was, I don't know, like $50,000 or $60,000. And then they paid for the overtime pay for some of these, people that were working there. And I can't remember if they said they gave it back or not. I don't know. There was a little bit of a,
I think they did end up giving it back. I remember reading that there was some kind of issue. And I believe that all of these men that were featured were asked if they wanted to be featured. I'm sure they signed off on it. Like, do you want to be a part of it? And I'm sure that if you did not want to be a part of it, you would have been moved off the H block.
No, absolutely. It was voluntary, that no one had to do it. They were all briefed on it beforehand. And if they said that if at any time they decided they didn't want to continue, they could just say, I don't want to continue anymore. And they would move them. So it was completely voluntary. So the experiment was basically that now, prior to this, the policy was, now these men were inside a 2-person cell for 23 hours a day. This very sparse cell, like nothing in there, literally like these bunk beds with mattresses that are not even mattresses. It's more like a thick blanket or something. And maybe a little desk. I mean, it's just tiny, sparse cell, 23 hours a day with one other person in there. And then they're let out for 1 hour a day. So it's like caged animals.
Yes.
Who, are just going crazy. So they show scenes of them in their normal daily routine when they get out for that 1 hour, and they're all just so amped up and hyped up, and fights start instantly. People are just yelling at each other, and the noise and the tempers, and there's all this fighting that occurs, and then they have to try to feed them, and I mean, it's like letting out caged animals.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine if you hated your roommate?
I know.
Could you imagine if you could not stand this person, or if this was the most annoying person you'd ever meet in your life? I mean, you'd go insane.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do
for
23 hours a day?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you look at that and you're like, you know what, considering that they're in there for 23 hours, they're actually acting pretty well.
Yes. Yes.
I think I would be crawling the walls and like screaming and just like going absolutely crazy.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing. We are disgusted when we see animals in cages. Do you know what I mean? We will protest that to the nth degree.
Right.
If you heard of a dog owner that kept their dog in a crate for 23 hours and then let them out 1 hour, you would think that that person was the worst dog owner known to man, no matter what this dog did.
Right.
And so that's the part that is just, And I think, what I read was that part of why it was like this was that some of it was they were short staffed. Like, a lot of this is because they just don't have enough staff to watch everything and watch everyone. That's one of the reasons why. Because apparently this Pulaski, it houses up to 1,200 people a day. And,
Wow.
and prison is a big business.
Mhm.
That's the other thing I would do. This is also part of it. No one should be profiting from a prison. Nobody. No, prisons should not be for profit. That's the other problem that we have.
Well, yeah, the prison industrial complex has been a thing for a long time. And now there's all these prisons that are privately owned
Mm-hmm.
and are for profit. And yeah, it's a big problem because they have an incentive
Yes.
to bring in as many inmates if they get paid by the head, an
Mm-hmm.
incentive to bring these people in and keep them in there.
Yes. And treat them. And why spend extra money on food? Why
Right.
spend extra money on
trying to make a profit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're going to have like the bare bones. So the experiment is they are going to, okay, and another part of this unit is that there is a prison guard at all times who is inside this little pod.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's like a big room, and then the upstairs, well, there's cells like lining the walls upstairs, downstairs, and then in the middle is like tables and where they eat, and when they get out they can come and sit and whatever. So there's a an officer who is sitting kind of like observing all this with their back towards the door, and they're always there and always watching and looking out for stuff. So anyway, so what they propose is that they're still going to be watched by guards. The guards will not be inside the pod. They'll be outside the pod. And then they also have guards watching them through closed circuit TV. And they put in extra cameras in there so that they can see more and see from different angles and see into all the cells and all that kind of stuff. But basically they open the cell doors. They're completely unlocked and they're free to come and go in and out of their cell 24 hours a day. They have to figure out, what they're going to do all day, how they're going to organize their day, how everyone's going to get fed, everything.
Yeah. Like you're a community now, you all together have to figure out how we're going to get this done.
Yeah.
I was, and if anyone, so I guess this Eric Higgins, he studied, what other countries were doing, like Scandinavia, which is known to be like one of the happiest people love it. They're the happiest places ever. These are the happiest people. And I was reading about what they do in some of these other countries like Norway. And, the officers, there's 2 years of training for the officers before that. And they are seen more as social workers than in our country. We see these they see themselves as de facto cops,
right.
And so these Norway officers, they go through 2 years of training and they look at you have to look at and understand what's the power that you hold over someone and how do you take that in and not abuse it. And so they really see themselves as social workers, and they allow them to keep their basic fundamental human rights, like the right to vote. And the whole, they still get high quality education, medical care, and mental health care. Now, this is a country where it's socialized. So, people are getting that on the outside. It's a little different than here. But basically, it was just this attitude of, if you treat someone like a monster, they're going to behave like a monster. And being treated as less of a human doesn't help someone ever feel better about themselves. The people that are in this prison system, nobody wakes up or no parent says, "Ooh, I can't wait for my kid to get into prison." They were all born just like we are. Parents had hopes and dreams, and something went awry. Most likely something in their home lives, the way they don't have a lot of coping skills. You are, acting out, you are committing these violent crimes, and you have no tools. You have no healthy ways of figuring out how to manage your life or deal with people. And a lot of times people act out because it's a response to trauma. So what we do in our country is we shame them. Shame, 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 shame. And that only further traumatizes, it only traumatizes them more. It makes them reject the norms of society even more. And then the cycle continues, and we have to break the cycle. We do. We don't have a choice. Norway seems to understand this, but we don't. And again, that goes against the profit issue, because if there's a profit having to do with it, then yeah, of course you want recidivism. I can never say that word. You want the people coming back, because that helps your profits, but that's the problem, is they're running them like, you would a store or a hotel or something, right? Like, come back soon, right? There's that attitude
for you any skills. We're not gonna send you out of here with any new skills. I mean, and this is a generalization. There are obviously programs in different prisons that are trying to do good, but as an overall model.
Yes.
Rehabilitation is not the model. The model is just punishment.
Yeah.
And we have more people imprisoned per capita in the US than any other country in the world, including communist China. So, yeah, and the recidivism rate is an average across the country. It's different in different states, but nationwide, it averages about 50%.
Yeah.
And that's high.
Yeah. And the thing is that we give, and obviously there's a lot of programs, but we give you no training, no nothing. We then kick you out, and you now have this scarlet letter on your chest, trying to get jobs, trying to get apartments, trying to get anything. The fact that we don't pay people in prison, like even minimum wage for the work that they do, there's a lot of prisons where, they're making stuff, they're producing stuff, and people are making money from this, and they're making 5 cents an hour or $1, whatever that is.
I just have to say that overall, yeah, whatever jobs you have in prison, you get paid very low for. But there are some places, some programs, some states where people are getting paid more.
Good.
Are learning skills,
Good.
are learning trades. There's different levels of incarceration, obviously. People that are in maximum security and that kind of stuff, yeah, they're not getting anything. But, there are work camps, and there are less restrictive, lower security, minimum security places where people can do stuff. So, I want to give the system a little bit of credit for whatever it is doing or trying to do. But the problem is that it feels like more and more, as the crimes get more and more violent, they just want to put these people in these maximum security prisons where, locked at 23 hours a day, locked down. And, and they're building these huge places like that to house these people. And that's really scary. But I mean, then again, these people are never going to get out because their sentences are so long. All these people with life sentences and double life sentences, they're not going to get out anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other thing that I personally think that putting someone away for life with no possibility of parole, that needs to be reserved. That really needs to be reserved to somebody or to a person that you're like, oh no, this person can never be out again. But again, we've talked about this on the show, but some 17, 18-year-old kid that is part of some gang because they had to join the gang in order to survive where they live, and then they get caught and they go away for the rest of their lives. That's not okay. And I think that, and all of the so many of what we saw with Unlocked, a lot of these men, a lot of it was connected to drugs. And to addiction, which personally, and I have this whole issue, I think that's more of a health issue. It's a mental health and a health issue than it is something that we need to be punishing people for. So again, I will totally admit, I do not know what it's like to have a family member or someone close to me, have some sort of tragedy. I can understand that it's hard to have empathy for these individuals because there are some individuals in this that committed murder, or allegedly. And And so, yeah, there has to be this balance. But the problem is that you've got, too many, you've got just, it's all the things that we've been talking about. It's like a perfect storm of one, like for profit and building more and not having the help that they need and not seeing them a certain way. You're not seeing the people there a certain way. Like all of it together has created the system that we have now.
Yeah. So we get to, so the sheriff tells the inmates, what the plan is. I think they may have already known because a little bit because, obviously they had to give their consent. But so he tells them what the plan is. And it's sort of a mixture of, the response is a mixture of, oh, gosh, this is never going to work. And some people are just all excited. And it's mostly like this is where it starts to break down by age.
Yes.
Where, the younger inmates, they're just celebrating. They're happy. They're not thinking about, okay, well, how's this going to work? What are we going to do? We got to organize, whatever. And then the older inmates, they're the ones who are like, they know that like if there's not some kind of a plan, there's going to be chaos.
Yeah.
And so there's this guy, Randy.
True story.
True Story is his nickname because he's always saying true story at the end of all of his stories.
Yeah, he's a talker. He is Mr. Talker, charming talker. Yeah,
and he's the one in the unit who he has special privileges because he was picked by the deputy in there to be in charge of like mealtime and cleanup and laundry, and so he's out of his cell more because he's doing these things. He gets the trays and everything ready for the meals, and then he cleans up and mops and does whatever. And so it gives him a little more freedom. And he's, kind of like a de facto leader. They
call him Pod Daddy. Yeah, Pod Daddy.
So that night, he literally he's doing his cleanup, and then he starts going around like room to room of all of the older guys and telling them, through the window because they're all locked in there. Through the window, he's like, okay, we're gonna basically getting their pod gang together.
Yeah,
the OGs.
Yes. Well, he's whipping the votes. He's doing what he needs to do to get people behind him.
That's right, because he knows these youngsters. They're not gonna do shit. So then the next morning, when everybody, they unlock the doors and everyone comes out, it is kind of a little bit of chaos at first.
Yeah, it is. It is. And what I thought was interesting, this is the other part about this, that we talked about the human nature of things. It's just so interesting how all of the older guys, and I think there was this feeling too with True Story, Randy, and another one of the OGs. I forgot. Squirrel, that's it. That the two of them, it was almost this feeling of course we're going to be in charge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was this vibe instantly of course we're going to be in charge, and of course we're going to be in charge. And I was watching this going, even though that, and I don't think any of the young guys wanted the job of being in charge. I don't think they even wanted it, but what they wanted was not to be told. They wanted him to be like, they wanted an election. You know what I mean? Just like how we are now. We don't mind someone taking charge. We just want a vote in it. And we just want to make sure that we get to say yes to this versus being told.
Yeah.
That's just human nature.
Yeah, because they had no ideas, they had no idea what to do. But yeah, they just didn't like being told, okay, yeah, like now we're in charge. And so for the most part, people went along with the older guys being in charge, and the young guys complained about it, but they didn't do anything about it. And they were literally screwing around like young kids, they were just like playing and joking and running. I mean, it was like kids had been, let out to play after.
Yeah. I mean, it's like someone pulled the fire alarm bell, right? And so they were like, woohoo, it's time. And again, that is very normal. It's a very normal reaction to it.
Yeah.
Like rebelling. So I don't know if I'm moving too far ahead, but then things start to break down because Randy, true story, starts to not feel very appreciated for but even though he sort of whipped the votes and said, this is what I want, I think he also felt like, well, I'm doing all this stuff and no one's listening to me. No one's appreciating me. No one's, so again, it shows you Randy, who I think I feel like he was younger than me. He was in his even though he looked a bit older.
Yeah, I think they said he's like 48 or something.
And so that's the thing. He's 48 years old timer. This really tells you.
But he looks older.
Yeah, he does. I mean, I think he's had some hard living years.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is Randy doesn't, even though he's older, Randy also doesn't have a lot of tools and he doesn't have a way of communicating. So of course he takes this attitude of, well, forget you people. I'm taking my stuff and I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right.
Kind of this mutiny attitude. And of course the young people are like, okay, fine, go,
Yeah. He's in jail this time he has charges of domestic assault and possession of drugs, but he's been in jail 9 times. So this has been his life, in and out. And so he doesn't have that great of skills. He might have some good skills for jail, but not for life skills, trying to
leadership skills. He doesn't have a ton of leadership skills. He hasn't been allowed to in his life, or he has not.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, and there's a lot of, we see a lot of the kind of illegal stuff that goes on. So there's these roommates. So it's East Side. He's really quite what's the word? I mean,
he's a character.
And he's got so many tricks and how to make stuff. It's like, if you just applied this kind of like discipline to the outside world, you could be like, the next tech giant.
Yeah. No, he's very smart. He's smart. He's charming, and he obviously has something there. And that's exactly what I was thinking too, of like, if you could take all of this and harness it in a different way. But again, I don't know East Side's background, but my guess was that East Side's parents did not do that with him, didn't harness his intelligence. And so this is where it went.
Yeah. Well, he's a real entrepreneur.
He is. Yes.
He does tattooing. So, he makes this tattoo ink out of, I don't know, whatever he can get a hold of. He makes hooch, out of,
I have to say, sorry.
Oh, they make it out of they take bread crusts from the trays of food that people don't eat, and then they they mix it with fruit and then sugar, like Kool-Aid packets, any kind of sugar they can. Put it in a plastic bag and ferment it inside the toilet. And they make alcohol.
Yeah.
They have these they call them coffee sticks.
That's what I was like. That was the one that I was like, ooh, I'd like to try that.
Yeah.
The coffee cigarettes. I'm like, what's that all about? Like smoking coffee?
Yeah. And he made a wick out using he took a battery out of a clock, and then
I wouldn't have known that. Would you have known to do that?
No, it had this material, and he made this big long wick that they used to light the, these coffee sticks. I mean, he's just very inventive.
He's very inventive. Very.
Psych Legal Pop will be right back after these messages.
Hello, this is Tess Brigham, one half of the podcast Psych Legal Pop. When I'm not podcasting with my sister and analyzing pop culture, I'm a speaker who talks about mental health in the workplace. In today's post-pandemic hybrid working world, mental health matters more than ever. I specialize in empowering organizations to retain their valuable employees. I understand the unique challenges facing young adults in today's world, and I'm here to bridge the gap. So head over to my website, www.tessbrigham.com, to learn more about my speaking services and how I can help your organization reach new heights of success. Let's revolutionize your organization's approach to mental health and employee retention. Visit www.tessbrigham.com to explore how we can collaborate.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
Very clever.
And you want to know something sad? This is sort of like, where are they now?
Oh, no.
Thing. So and he's the one who he set off the fire alarm with his wick, and then all hell broke loose and everyone was getting in trouble, and he took responsibility.
Yeah. So all this stuff blew up. Yeah. All this stuff blew up. The Eric Higgins had to come back in, give everyone a lecture, tell them, hey, so you all need to think about this, and I'm going to lock everything down for 24 hours and come back. And what he posed to them, I thought was interesting. He said, well, so what was it? It was like, you all need to vote to decide who needs to go or who takes ownership of this. And before they could even vote, he confesses. He goes to them, which again, I don't. And I think this happened. It had been a couple weeks while this was going on. Like, I don't think that he would have done that in another scenario. He saw, right? There was something worth him fighting for, and he took ownership. He has the ability to take accountability. That's what we want people to do, and he did it. And it's like, so this is working in some way.
He didn't want to screw it up for everybody else.
Yes.
So he had to leave for a week, and then he came.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And then after the show, he was whatever he was in there for. He got convicted. He was transferred to do his time. To another facility. And then just earlier this year, in June of this year, only 28 days from his release, he died.
Oh, God. From drugs?
They said that there was no, I believe they said that there was no foul play. There was no drugs. I'm not sure what he died of. I mean, he could have had some kind of cardiac thing or something from doing drugs.
I was going to say, he didn't live the healthiest life. So I can see that. But that's the part that's so, God. I mean,
his roommate.
Was that Crooks?
Crooks. Yeah. So he, you look at this guy and he just kind of seems like this goofy, guy, but he was in there, for capital murder, charged with capital murder. He shot, this guy 11 times in a hospital because
that was such a weird story.
He'd been abusing this girl, her mom and his dad, they grew up together. Their parents dated or something. And she had this abusive boyfriend and put her in the hospital, I guess. And the boyfriend was there visiting her in the hospital, and he came and he shot the guy and said he deserved it and he didn't feel bad about it. And so he got convicted. He's serving a life sentence plus 15 years or something.
So, does this guy really, I understand he made his choice, but there's no mitigating circumstances to this. There's no I just feel like someone like him, if he got into the system and did something and proved to them that he was worthy, that he was in a better place, he should have hope of being able to get out. I don't know if there was a documentary, I mentioned it before, that came out in 2022 or 2023 about, it was a 4-part, it was also Netflix, and it was about this prison program. This college program in prison where there were prisoners that were essentially in college, and they were part of a debate team, and another university came to debate them in prison, and they won. Like, it was a big kind of story that these,
prisoners won.
The prisoners won this debate. And what you see is you meet all of the men that are in this program. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, they will tell you, yes, I did this thing. It was awful. I regret it. But now they're sort of like, they're actually rehabilitating, they are learning, they're in a different place. They're debating, they're learning all of this stuff, and they talk about that, and they have these moments of feeling like, oh my God, I'm a normal person. And then it's like back to prison.
Yeah.
You debate and you have this amazing experience, and then you're back to prison. And it's like, this is what we need to be doing, right? This is it. We're doing it, but we're still not letting them out. We're still not figuring out a way. So how do we reintroduce them to society? Because we feel so like we're so punitive in this country. We're so much like, you have to suffer,
Yeah, I know. It's a tough one. It's a tough thing to balance with, victims and, I don't know. But
I don't know.
Yeah. So one of the things that the sheriff then started to introduce, the first thing he introduced was he made all phone calls free. So this is a big thing in jails, prisons, for years. It's a big money maker again. If someone, you either have to call, collect, and someone has to, accept the charges, or someone on the outside has to put money on your books to have credit to use the phone, however it works in that particular place. And it's very expensive. The phone calls are very, very expensive. And these are families who don't have a lot of money, and sometimes they don't have any money to give. And so then you're cut off from your loved ones, your support system, whatever. So he made the phones free for everybody. But
they could, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, immediately they realized, I can't remember who instigated this, but they realized this is like a sign of growth. They're like, okay, well, if the phones are free, there's going to be this run on the phones. So we got to figure out a system of the phones. So they made like a sign up sheet.
Yeah.
So you signed up to use the phone at a certain time. And I'm like, okay, good. They're learning.
Yes.
So they're not fighting over the phone. But it really makes a huge difference to the mental health of the inmates and their families. And I was telling you before we started that in 2023, in all California state prisons, all telephone calls made from an incarcerated person are free of charge to the incarcerated person and the friends and family. So nobody has to pay for phone calls. And they also provide tablets at no cost to families and inmates to use to, I think you can make the calls through the tablets. You can do video calls. You can access it. It's monitored and restricted and whatever, but you can also access information about rehabilitative services, and have like positive activities. I don't know, do Wordle or crossword puzzles, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how else do you expect them to, be able to make progress in their life or,
Well, a couple things. There was one where, one person was complaining that he couldn't get a hold of his attorney. These, especially in jail, like once you get to prison, like the case is over, obviously you're appealing and maybe, but like this is the time of your incarceration that you really need to be able to talk to your lawyer. And, the ability for the lawyers for them to communicate with the lawyers. And the fact that the phones it was like all day long, right? It wasn't sort of this, you only have these 2 hours. And I think that also creates problems too, where there's that, I got to get in there. There's
only 2 phones.
There's only 2 phones and there's only 2 hours. And I got to, that panic. But there was also another person, I forgot his name, where he wanted to get bailed out. And I think his bail was like $1,000 or something. And no one in his family could afford it. And that's the thing. I think really easy to be like, well, just throw stuff on their books and just put money. It's like, these are people who they are family members. $1,000 for them it might as well be $1 million.
Yeah, he called his sister or somebody, and she's like, "Well, I need new tires for my car. You know, she's
and
got to be able to get to work." And and I think it said eventually he did get out on bail. Is they finally, but $1,000.
Yeah, and that the decision is between tires so that you can get to work or bailing this person out. Like, so there's a lot of people that live on the edge, and there's a lot of people that live on the edge, a lot of people that live on the edge of poverty. And, you know, I would believe that why some of these people start selling drugs, why they start, right? You can see you have no money to eat. You know, your parents are drug addicts and they are not doing anything for you. The oldest son starts selling drugs and, you know, to keep the rest of the family together. And yes, it's illegal, but And this is what we do is we then punish him. Yeah. You know, he gets caught, like the system ends.
Yeah. This is not our biggest problem. Like, we take something that's really not a problem and we make it into a huge problem, you know, by just locking people up. And like, that's why in California and different places, you know, they're doing away with bail for these stupid things.
Yes.
Bail's $1,000. Whatever you did is like nothing. You're not a danger to society. And so, you should not be sitting in jail. You should be out. You should be, you know, trying to work, get a job, do whatever you need to do to deal with whatever it is that you have done.
Yes.
And, you know, move forward. It just makes no sense. And so that was another thing that really empowered them to be like, we don't want to lose this. Every time they would get some perks, you know, because he would roll out these privileges and perks. And each time, you know, they don't want to lose the phone calls. And I remember like there were a few times where someone started getting into a fight or something started happening and they were like, you know, dude, knock it off. Like, you don't want to go back. You want to go back to being locked up 23 hours a day.
Yeah.
So it was a really big incentive. And I think, didn't he also make commissary free at some point?
Yeah. I feel like there was a few other, or like commissary it was free, but I don't know if it was commissary. There was something else that was open. And wasn't there like visits they could visit more often? That was like the other thing.
We're now twice a week.
Yes. They upped the visits, the phone. And we learned one of the men, is it Krishna Pino Clark, who otherwise known as Tiny.
Yeah.
Right. You meet Tiny and he comes across, you know, in the beginning as this Mr. Tough guy. And like, he's small, but I'm Mr. Tough guy. And then we learn about his son. And then suddenly, this scary person becomes a human. And you could see how important it was for him to have this connection and how much he was so grateful to have the phones and the ability to visit with his son. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, if you keep people's family away from them, then who are we are essentially the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? That Jim Rohn thing. So if you do not have those other influences, children, right, something worth fighting for, then what would be the point?
Yeah. And
what would be the point?
His son was 14. I think he said he hadn't seen him since he was like 3.
Oh my gosh.
Because he'd been, because he'd been like in and out of jail. He'd been doing all this stuff. And, you know, for whatever reason, he, you know, now he became really obsessed with reconnecting with his son. And so he was able to finally call him, talk to him on the phone. And then the son's mother brought him for a visit. And it was just so sweet. The son was so sweet.
Yeah.
He was like, you know, I love you, Dad, and I miss you. And it was sincere. It was like, you know, and he was talking about how, you know, he wanted to, Tiny was saying how he wanted to come and watch him play basketball. It was so sweet. And you just saw like this guy who, in the beginning, because he is small, so he's got to be tough. You know? He said, you know, in every crew I was in, I was the smallest one. So I got to be, you know, like, he's got to be like this, got to be tough. And so he's walking around like all tough guy and talking shit. And then And then you see him with his son, talking to his son, he just turns into a different person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of it comes back to like the Brene Brown and vulnerability and shame. Like we have these systems where we, just shame people, humiliate people, make people feel horrendous, and that it doesn't work. Shame doesn't work. Vulnerability does. Learning to be vulnerable, which is what he had. So he had this moment where he could be vulnerable and be vulnerable with his son, get that vulnerability back and experience it and know like, oh, loving him and expressing my love to him. This is a good thing. This makes me happy. This is right. And yeah, but in these prison systems, whether you're a man or a woman, you have to, like, you cannot show that. You cannot show those parts of yourself.
Yeah.
But you have to have that part of who you are.
Yeah. So at one point, in the middle of all this, they bring in like three new inmates, because that's part of the reality of these facilities. People come and go. And so the sheriff wanted to see how they were going to react to this, and didn't really go good.
Yeah. It didn't go well. No.
There was this one guy who was really, really annoying.
Yes. I will say I was kind of with him on this. He was an annoying person. I would have hated to be his roommate.
I understand this. Yeah. They were playing cards, and this new guy,
Is it weekly?
Weekly. That sounds familiar. Yeah. He was just being super annoying, and he was cheating, and they caught him cheating, and I don't know, everyone was just pissed off, and a bunch of them basically just took him into the cell and just jumped him. And
yeah. So we saw this dynamic in the beginning of the series before the Eric Higgins started this program, was there seemed to be some sort of like jail, the way in which things are handled. Like if someone has a problem with you, they take you into the cell. One person takes you in the cell, like seems to like hit you, knock you upside your head or something along those lines. But they're not gushing blood or anything, but they've been hit. And then basically the officers asked the guy that got hit what happened. He said, I fell off my bunk bed. Of course, everyone knows that's a lie. And that becomes sort of the de facto way of handling these like small moments. And so it was really startling, right? To have, this was not how they normally took care of things, to have like 3 or 4 guys jump this other guy. But that's what they did. But,
yeah,
again, I'm not co-signing the way in which it was handled, but I'm just saying that it was interesting. It was almost kind of like this guy wasn't part of our group, and this guy's it's almost like they had even more anger towards him because he was disrupting something that was working so well before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So of course the guards figure out what's happening, and they come in and they ask the guy, and he's like, he said, I fell off the bed,
because he was an OG too. He was older too.
He knew what to say.
Though I think he was only in his 40s, but I guess if you make it to your 40s, you're an OG.
That's a hard,
it's a hard 40.
But then I forget what happened. Did they get any consequences because of that, or
I can't remember. They took that guy out and said like, okay, this is not, this guy isn't working for this. But I did wonder, like, if someone like Weekly had come in the beginning, what would his attitude have been different than coming in and then trying to cheat? But I think this is just kind of maybe who Weekly is as a person. So, and that's the thing. Not everybody is ready for all of these things. Not everybody, is at that place. But I do think that if you have prisoners that are seeing this happening, they want that. Like, people need incentives. I'm sorry, but we all go to work because we want to eat, because we want a roof over our head. We have to have incentives to do stuff. And we show up because we show up to work and we don't piss our bosses off, and we do the things that we say that we're going to do for survival. And that's what happens in prison too. There's a system of survival. So let's create a new system of survival in prison, like a new way of thinking, not like, be the top dog of this prison system, but like, how do I do this? How do we do this so that we change the structure? Anyway.
Yeah, I think, working together for some incentive or some reward or something positive really seemed to work, because that's what, every time they would get a new privilege or something, they had less incentive to screw up. And if someone started going off the rails, everyone would be like, hey, come on, we don't want that. So actually the guy who killed the guy in the hospital room, that guy was named AJ. It wasn't Crooks. Crooks was this other guy. He was interesting. He's the one who had the tattoos all over his head and had a bald head with tattoos and really tatted up. And he was
he the one that wanted to try to get into a drug and alcohol rehab program? Again, another example of someone who's been in and out of jail his entire life, but because of drug problems.
Just drugs, right?
You know,
so he said, I'm clean. I've been clean for a couple months because I've been in here. And he really, really wanted to get out, go to rehab. And so at the end, when they were doing the, like, where are they now type stuff, it said that he was in a rehab facility in Florida, I think. But then since then, he was rearrested in January, because this was filmed not that long ago. I think it was filmed in like 2023. He was rearrested in January on drug trafficking charges. So that's just unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing about the drug thing that's really hard is, a lot of people, it's the drugs that are forcing them to do it, but then they go out and they commit these very violent crimes. And that's the part that's always really tricky is, I think there has to be some sort of level of punishment for someone who's committing a violent crime.
Or drug trafficking.
Or drug trafficking. Like, there has to be something, but at the same time, they're only doing it because they're a drug addict. It's not what they would normally do. So that's the part that's really tricky. Also,
I was also struck by, there was 3 young guys, like really young guys. These are guys in their 20s. Who all 3 of them were charged with capital murder.
There was another guy, that one kid, the big black kid. Seemed so young.
He was like a gentle giant.
Yes.
Like this big guy, but he was so calm and like, he never raised his voice. He was so calm and cool. And he was, he had capital murder charges and other charges. And and he was like 22 or something. It was so sad. You're like, what the hell? Like, what
happened here?
What is happening? I don't know what happened to him, but then there were 2 other guys. This guy Mayhem.
Yes. Mayhem. That was Mayhem. I think that Mayhem was the roommate. Yeah.
He was like the leader of the youngsters, who didn't like being told what to do. But he was in there on capital murder charges. I'm not sure what happened to him. But one of the other guy, Parkinson, he had like the twists with the rubber bands, the blue rubber bands. He was in there for murder, but then the charges were dropped. And then they showed him at the end, he was like out, they showed him like by the ocean with his girlfriend or something. But it's just like, these random, okay, so why is one person in, like, 3 people charged with capital murder. One of them charges are just dropped, and he's out. And then I don't know what happens to these other 2, but they're so young.
Yeah. Very young.
Yeah.
And again, yes, they did these things or maybe not. We don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, people do these things. Absolutely. And at the same time, I don't know. I just feel like I think that how someone gets to that point, a bunch of crapola, the world let them down in a lot of different ways.
But again,
until they got to that point.
We don't know. First of all, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
We don't know if any of these people actually committed a crime. Black men are notoriously, and historically convicted wrongly all the time, arrested and convicted all the time. So, I mean, it's just very problematic. And the whole thing is just, but regardless of what people are being charged with or what the outcome is, I mean, yeah, if you're innocent until proven guilty, why are you automatically just taken out of society and put into a hellhole?
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was just thinking. Or, it's like, this is what we do, whether you're innocent or, no matter what. You're innocent till proven guilty, but this is the problem. The minute you are arrested, the minute you are charged, that all goes out the window. Yeah. And we now think you're guilty. We see you differently, and we think that you're guilty, and then we put you into a system that reinforces the guilt because you're in jail. Well, of course you must have done something, right? You couldn't have possibly not done anything and ended up here. That's the problem. You're right. It's, again, we can't, locking people up before we've convicted them. It's very different. And this is, I think, obviously every situation is different. If you've caught someone in the act, or if someone they've pled guilty or whatever it is, that's a different story. But and I think that we just lock everyone up, right? Part of this is just, how did that system get about? Like that I don't know. I don't know enough about it, about the bail system, about how did all this come about? How did we get to this point where we have bail? Has this always been how we've done things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a right to bail, generally, although there are circumstances where bail can be denied if, the person is considered such a, danger to society. But the problem is they set these bails so high that most of these people can't make it. Obviously, wealthy people, they
all manage
they can get out on bail.
Yeah.
But, remember they didn't set bail for O.J. Simpson. He was denied bail. That's why he had to sit in jail that whole time. Yeah. But and a lot of times the bail is not that much, but these people, they don't have the money. I mean, they personally certainly don't have the money. Their families don't, and they don't necessarily have the collateral to put up, like a house or something. And why would you risk losing your home, for your deadbeat cousin who, he's like in and out of jail and whatever, So that's how it happens. And, there's can be a lot of conditions on bail. You might have to be monitored or, so it's not an option for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else that we missed? Those were all my notes.
Yeah, I think, did I go through all the, those are all the, where are you now that I could find? Tiny.
Yeah, where's Tiny now?
So he was released, and he's out, I believe, as of, current time. He's out, and he's, reestablishing his relationship with his son. So
that's good.
Yeah, prayers up for Tiny.
Yeah. What about Randy? True story.
Yeah, Randy got transferred. He's still in jail. I think he got transferred to a different facility. He must have gotten a sentence. Must have been sentenced and transferred. So he's still incarcerated. Remember that guy, Willie Lovelace, the guy, he was a little bit older with the dreadlock kind of hair. He's serving 7 years. So he got sentenced. And that's all the updates I have.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, it was, I thought it was fascinating. I mean, I was on Reddit looking, a lot of people were criticizing, like I said, criticizing the experience because it felt like, is it like a reality show? What was truthful or not? Are we exploiting people? But I mean, and a lot of people pointed out, which is true, that, you know, part of this and part of why Scandinavian countries it works is that there is, you know, there should have been, now that they're out all day long, like there should be more programs, more mental health services, more anger management services, more of that. I don't know. That might have been available and we didn't see it. But,
well, yeah, I wouldn't call it a reality show. I mean, reality shows are fake. This was a true reality. I don't think anybody was modifying their behavior, at least that I could tell. Nobody was modifying their behavior because they're being filmed. They were very real. I don't think having the cameras there made any difference. And I hope they do it again.
Yeah.
I thought it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I would be fascinated to watch like this was over 6 weeks. So what would it be like to watch it over a year or 2 years or 3 years, or what happens and how does it change things? So I was happy to see that, you know, our governor here, Gavin Newsom, had signed about 25 different prison reform bills. I didn't know that about the iPads, which I think is great. You know, that makes me really happy that this is, you know, that this is what we're doing. So hopefully we can continue to work on this and reform and become more like the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I don't know if we ever will, because the problem is they have socialized.
We're not a socialist country, but I would like to know what happened here, because at the end of the show, he says, I'm going to leave the cells open, you know, because he considered it a success and they weren't able to deal with it. So he said he was going to leave the cells open. So are they still open? How long did that last? What happened? Because I imagine now it's probably a whole different group of people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because because this is like a holding place, you know, everyone's going to go somewhere, you know, they're not going to stay here.
Yeah.
So
unreal. All right. Well,
okay.
Yes.
Have you ever watched that show, 60 Days In?
No, I've heard about it, right? Because is it about someone who volunteers to go in 60 days in to get a real sense of what it's like?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it would make me too anxious. Yeah. All of it felt too anxiety, you know.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Because a lot of times the inmates, they can tell, like they can suss these people out. And especially now that they know that there's a show called 60 Days In, they really so that would make me very anxious. And I've never watched like snippets of it, but never watched the whole show.
And there's some other ones like First and Last, like someone's first day of prison, someone's last day of prison. Like there's those kinds of shows. No, I mean, a lot of them just give me a lot of anxiety and then they get me angry and, you know, and then I prefer to watch stuff like this where there is some sort of hope. Yeah. Some kind of something that's coming around. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, that is it. If you enjoy our show and want to hear more from us, then please go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Psych Legal Pop Podcast. You can also leave us a 5-star rating and review. Those always really help us, and support the podcast by subscribing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Stephen here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Stephen will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fanfellows wherever you get your podcasts.
That new thing? Yeah, we've got it. The Drop by GNC, bringing you all the newness that matters, handpicked by the pros who actually know what's up and what's proven to work. We keep you on top of the trends and dialed into what's next. Whether you're crushing it at the gym, leveling up your game, or thriving every day, The Drop by GNC is where the latest solutions in health and wellness land first. Non-stop innovation and fresh finds daily. Explore what's new and what's next on The Drop by GNC.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners, only 30 calories, just 5 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. That great Pepsi taste with even more to love. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.